The gunshot that killed Sarah Malone echoed through the canyon long after her body hit the dust, and Daniel Malone had not spoken a complete sentence in the 3 months since. His daughter Lily watched him waste away on that porch, day after day, staring at nothing with eyes that had forgotten how to see beauty. She was 18 now, old enough to understand that grief could hollow a man out from the inside, leave him breathing but not really living. The ranch outside Prescott, Arizona Territory, had fallen into disrepair since her mother's death. Cattle wandered through broken fences, the barn door hung crooked on its hinges, and wildflowers that her mother had once tended with such care grew in chaotic tangles across the property. It was May of 1883, and the desert bloomed with stubborn life despite everything. Lily had tried everything to reach her father. She cooked his favorite meals that he barely touched. She read aloud from the newspapers he used to enjoy. She played the fiddle her mother had taught her, hoping the music would stir something in him. Nothing worked. Daniel Malone sat in that rocking chair from dawn until dusk, a ghost haunting his own life, and Lily felt herself drowning in the same grief that consumed him. Then one morning she woke with a strange clarity. She had dreamed of her mother standing in a field of Indian paintbrush and lupine, smiling the way she used to smile, and when Lily opened her eyes, she knew what she had to do. The sun had barely crested the mountains when she grabbed an old wicker basket from the kitchen and headed out into the wild country beyond their property line. The air smelled of sage and creosote, sharp and clean, and the heat had not yet become oppressive. Lily walked for nearly an hour, following paths her mother had shown her years ago, until she found herself in a small valley where wildflowers grew in impossible abundance. Indian paintbrush blazed red and orange against the pale earth. Purple lupine stood tall and proud. Desert marigolds created pools of gold among the rocks. Apache plumes swayed in the morning breeze, delicate white flowers giving way to pink feathery seed heads. Her mother had known every plant by name, had taught Lily their secrets and their medicine, had shown her which ones the butterflies loved and which ones could survive the harshest drought. Lily knelt in the flowers and began to pick them carefully, selecting each bloom with intention. She chose the brightest paintbrush, the most perfect lupine, marigolds that seemed to capture sunlight in their petals. She worked slowly, speaking to her mother in whispers, telling her about the ranch and about her father and about the fear that lived in her chest like a stone. "I do not know how to help him," she said to the wind. "I do not know how to make him see that we are still here, that life is still here." The basket filled slowly. Lily lost track of time in the simple rhythm of finding and picking, moving through the valley like a dancer. She gathered purple verbena and white evening primrose. She found clusters of desert bluebells and added them to her collection. The basket grew heavy with color and life. She did not notice the rider watching from the ridge above until she stood up, brushing dirt from her skirt. He sat perfectly still on a bay horse, silhouetted against the brightening sky, and for a moment Lily's heart hammered with fear. This was isolated country, and a young woman alone could face dangers her mother had warned her about, but the rider made no move toward her. He simply watched, and something in his stillness calmed her racing pulse. After a long moment, he touched the brim of his hat in a gesture of acknowledgement, then turned his horse and disappeared over the ridge. Lily stood with her basket of flowers, wondering who he was and why he had been watching, but the morning was getting on and she needed to get home. She retraced her steps through the desert, the basket balanced on her hip, hope fluttering in her chest like a captured bird. When she crested the final hill and saw the ranch spread out below, she paused. From this distance, she could see her father on the porch, a dark shape in the rocking chair, unmoving as stone. For a moment, doubt crashed over her. What could flowers possibly do against grief so profound? How could beauty matter to a man who could not see past his pain? But she had come this far, and turning back felt like betraying something important. Lily continued down the slope, her boots kicking up small clouds of dust, the flowers bouncing gently in her basket. Daniel Malone did not look up as his daughter approached the porch. His eyes were fixed on some distant point, the same way they had been every day since they buried Sarah in the cemetery plot behind the house. His hands rested on the arms of the rocking chair, calloused and still, no longer able to find purpose in work. Lily climbed the porch steps slowly. She set the basket down on the weathered boards between them, then knelt beside it and began arranging the flowers. She did not speak. She simply worked, creating small bouquets and laying them out in a pattern, the way her mother used to arrange flowers for the Sunday table: red paintbrush with yellow marigolds, purple lupine with white primrose, desert bluebells clustered together like a piece of sky brought down to earth. The porch boards became a canvas of color, vibrant and alive, and Lily worked with her mother's hands, making something beautiful from wild things. She did not see when her father's eyes shifted, did not notice when his gaze moved from the distant nothing to the flowers spreading across the porch. But she heard the sound he made, a small catch in his breath, like a man surfacing from deep water. "Sarah used to pick those," Daniel said, and his voice cracked from disuse. Lily's hands stilled. She looked up at her father and saw tears tracking through the dust on his weathered face. "I know, Papa." The paintbrush was her favorite, said it looked like the desert was on fire with beauty. "She taught me where to find them." Daniel reached out with a trembling hand and touched one of the red blooms. His fingers were gentle, reverent, as if the flower were something precious and fragile. "I thought I would die from missing her." "You almost did," Lily said softly. "You have been dying slow right here on this porch." Her father's face crumpled. He covered his eyes with one hand, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Lily rose and went to him, wrapping her arms around him the way he had held her when she was small and afraid. They stayed that way for a long time, two people learning how to grieve together instead of alone. When Daniel finally lifted his head, his eyes were clearer than they had been in months. He looked at the flowers covering the porch, then at his daughter. "Your mother would not want this, would not want me to waste the life she loved so much." "No," Lily agreed. "She would want you to live." "I do not know if I remember how." "Then we will learn together." Daniel nodded slowly. He looked out at the ranch, really seeing it for the first time since Sarah's death, and winced at the state of disrepair. "We have a lot of work to do." "We do," Lily said, "but not today. Today we just sit with these flowers and remember that beauty still exists." So they sat together on that porch, father and daughter, surrounded by wildflowers and beginning the long journey back to life. The morning stretched into afternoon, and eventually Daniel stood up. His movements were stiff and slow, but there was purpose in them now. He picked up one of the small bouquets Lily had made and carried it to the fence post where Sarah used to watch the sunset. "For her," he said simply, placing the flowers where his wife had loved to stand. Lily felt tears prick her eyes, but they were different from the tears she had shed in the dark months. These tears carried something lighter, something that felt almost like relief. Over the following days, Daniel began to wake up. He started with small things, fixing the barn door and mending a section of fence. He ate the meals Lily prepared and actually tasted the food. He spoke in complete sentences, telling stories about Sarah that made them both laugh and cry. The ranch began to recover slowly, like a patient regaining strength after a long illness. And every few days, Lily would walk out into the wild country and return with a basket of flowers that she would arrange on the porch or place on her mother's grave. It became a ritual, a way of honoring what they had lost while choosing to remain among the living. 3 weeks after that first morning with the flowers, Lily was out in the valley again when she heard hoofbeats behind her. She turned to find the same rider from before, closer now, his face visible beneath the wide brim of his hat. He was young, maybe 25, with sun-darkened skin and eyes the color of whiskey in firelight. He wore the simple clothes of a working cowboy, trail-worn denim and a faded shirt, but there was something about the way he carried himself that suggested capability and quiet strength. "I apologize for startling you," he said, removing his hat. His voice was low and warm, with a slight accent she could not quite place. "I have seen you out here gathering flowers a few times now. I wanted to make sure you knew you were being watched for safety's sake." Lily straightened, her basket balanced on her hip. "You have been watching me for weeks." "Not watching in a concerning way," he said quickly, a flush creeping up his neck. "My employer's land borders this valley. I ride through on my rounds. I just noticed you were out here alone, and with the rougher elements that pass through these days, I thought someone should keep an eye out." His earnestness was disarming. Lily found herself relaxing slightly. "That is thoughtful, I suppose, though I have been walking this land since I was a child." "I do not doubt you can handle yourself," he said, "but the territory has gotten more dangerous since the Silver Rush. Men coming through who do not respect boundaries or propriety." He seemed to realize how forward he was being and cleared his throat. "I am Nathaniel Cross. I work for the Holbrook Ranch, Lily Malone. My father's spread is just over the eastern ridge." Recognition flashed in Nathaniel's eyes. "Daniel Malone's place. I heard about your mother. I am truly sorry." The sympathy in his voice was genuine, without the awkward pity that so many people offered. Lily felt something loosen in her chest. "Thank you. It has been a difficult time." "The flowers are for her, in a way." "They are for my father, actually, to help him remember that life continues." She was not sure why she was telling this stranger such personal things, but something about him invited confidence. Nathaniel looked at the basket, then back at her face. "That is a kind thing you are doing." "It is the only thing I could think to do." They stood in the flower-filled valley, the sun climbing higher, and talked. Nathaniel told her about his work on the Holbrook Ranch, managing cattle and maintaining the property. He had come to Arizona Territory from Texas 2 years ago, looking for a fresh start after his own family losses. His parents and younger brother had died in a fever outbreak, and he had been unable to stay in the place where everything reminded him of them. "So you understand," Lily said softly. "I do. Grief is a lonely country to travel through." They talked until the sun suggested late morning, and then Nathaniel offered to ride alongside her back toward her father's ranch to ensure she arrived safely. Lily accepted, walking while he kept his horse to a slow pace beside her. When they reached the edge of Malone property, Nathaniel stopped. "Would it be all right if I checked in on you again when you are out gathering flowers?" Lily looked up at him, this cowboy who had been quietly watching over her without asking for anything in return. "I would like that." He smiled, and it transformed his serious face into something younger and more open. "Then I will see you again, Miss Malone." "Lily," she said. "Just Lily." "Lily," he repeated, as if testing how her name felt in his mouth. Then he touched his hat brim and rode off, and Lily continued home with her basket of flowers and a strange warmth in her chest that had nothing to do with the desert sun. Daniel was on the porch when she arrived, not sitting in the rocking chair but standing at the rail, looking out at the work he had been doing. He turned when he heard her approach and smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes. "You were gone longer today," he observed. "I met someone," Lily admitted, climbing the steps. "A cowboy from the Holbrook Ranch. He has been keeping watch when I go out for flowers, making sure I am safe." Her father's expression shifted into something protective. "What is his name?" "Nathaniel Cross. He seems like a good man, Papa." Daniel considered this. He knew of the Holbrook Ranch, a respectable operation run by a family that had been in the territory for years. "I would like to meet this Nathaniel Cross if he is going to be watching my daughter." "I think he would appreciate that," Lily said. She began arranging the flowers on the porch, and Daniel helped her, their hands working together the way they used to work together on everything before grief had separated them. That evening, Daniel played his harmonica for the first time since Sarah's death, a mournful tune that somehow still carried hope in its notes. Lily listened and watched the stars emerge over the desert, and thought about a cowboy with kind eyes who understood what it meant to lose everything. Nathaniel began appearing regularly when Lily went to gather flowers. He never imposed himself on her solitude, but he was always nearby, a quiet presence that made her feel safe without making her feel watched. They would talk while she selected blooms, conversations that ranged from the practical to the philosophical. He told her about growing up in Texas, about learning to ride before he could walk, about the brother who had been his best friend. She told him about her mother, about the garden Sarah had kept, about the music and laughter that had filled their home before the gunshot that changed everything. "How did it happen?" Nathaniel asked one morning, and Lily was surprised to find she wanted to tell him. Wrong place, wrong time. There was a dispute in town, two men arguing over a card game. Guns were drawn. My mother was just walking past the saloon on her way to the general store, a stray bullet. She swallowed hard. She died instantly, the doctor said. She did not suffer. Nathaniel's jaw tightened. Those men should hang. They did. Judge showed no mercy, but it did not bring her back. Lily touched a lupine bloom, feeling the softness of its petals. My father watched her die in the street. He held her while the light went out of her eyes. I think part of him died there too. But he is coming back, Nathaniel said gently. Because of you, because of flowers, Lily said with a small smile, because beauty is stronger than we think. As the weeks passed, their friendship deepened into something more. Nathaniel began finding excuses to ride by the Malone ranch, ostensibly to discuss shared fence lines or water rights, but really to see Lily and meet her father. Daniel took the measure of the young cowboy and approved of what he saw. Nathaniel worked hard, spoke honestly, and looked at Lily with a respect and tenderness that reminded Daniel of how he had once looked at Sarah. "He is a good man," Daniel told his daughter one evening, "if his intentions are honorable." "They are, Papa," Lily said, blushing. "We are just friends." "Friends can become more," Daniel said. "Your mother was my best friend before she was my wife. That is how it should be." July arrived with scorching heat, and the wildflowers began to fade from the valleys. Lily had to search harder to find blooms worth gathering, but she persisted, needing the ritual and the hope it represented. Nathaniel started bringing her to places he had discovered in his range, riding secret spots, where springs kept the earth moist, and flowers bloomed even in the height of summer. One afternoon, he led her to a small canyon where a creek ran through red rock, creating a ribbon of green in the arid landscape. Columbines grew along the water's edge, delicate and impossible, their red and yellow flowers like tiny lanterns. "I have never seen them outside of the mountains," Lily breathed, kneeling beside the water. "How do they grow here? The canyon protects them, creates its own little climate." Nathaniel crouched beside her, watching her face instead of the flowers. "You look happy." "I am," Lily realized. It was the first time she had said those words since her mother died and actually meant them. She turned to find Nathaniel very close, his eyes searching hers. "Lily," he said softly, "I need you to know that this is not casual for me. These weeks we have spent together, they have meant everything." Her heart began to hammer. "They have meant everything to me too. I think about you constantly, when I am working, when I am trying to sleep, every moment in between. You have become essential to me like water or air." He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his touch gentle. "I am falling in love with you. I think I have been since that first morning I saw you in the valley, gathering flowers to heal your father's heart." Lily's breath caught. She had known her feelings were growing into something profound, but hearing him speak the words aloud made them real and terrifying and wonderful. "I am falling in love with you too." Nathaniel's face broke into a smile of pure joy. He cupped her face in his hands, calloused and warm, and kissed her with a tenderness that made her eyes sting with tears. The creek babbled beside them, and columbines swayed in the breeze, and Lily felt her heart opening in ways she had thought impossible after so much grief. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Nathaniel rested his forehead against hers. "I want to court you properly, with your father's blessing." "You have to ask him," Lily said, laughing softly, "but I think he already knows. I will ask him tonight." They rode back to the Malone ranch together. Nathaniel on his horse and Lily on the gentle mare her father had given her years ago. The sun was setting, painting the desert in shades of gold and rose, and everything felt charged with possibility. Daniel was mending a water trough when they arrived. He straightened slowly, watching Nathaniel help Lily dismount with careful hands, and something knowing flickered in his eyes. "Sir," Nathaniel said, approaching with his hat in his hands, "I would like to speak with you if you have a moment." "I figured you might," Daniel said. He set down his tools and gestured toward the porch. "Let us sit." Lily stayed by the horses, giving them privacy but close enough to hear. She watched her father and Nathaniel settle into chairs, two men separated by years but united in their love for her. "I love your daughter," Nathaniel said without preamble. "I want to court her with the intention of marriage if she will have me and if you will give your blessing." Daniel studied the young cowboy for a long moment. "You know what we have been through, what Lily has been through." "I do, sir." "She deserves a man who will protect her, provide for her, stand by her through whatever storms come." Daniel's voice was rough with emotion. "She deserves a man who will love her the way I loved her mother, completely, faithfully, for all his days." "That is the kind of man I want to be for her," Nathaniel said. "I cannot promise I will be perfect, but I can promise I will try every single day to be worthy of her." Daniel's eyes were bright. He stood and extended his hand. "Then you have my blessing, son." Nathaniel shook his hand firmly, relief and joy washing over his face. Lily ran to the porch and threw her arms around her father, then around Nathaniel, laughing and crying at the same time. "Your mother would have liked him," Daniel whispered to his daughter. "She would have approved." Over the following months, Nathaniel courted Lily with old-fashioned dedication. He brought her wildflowers he had found on his range rides. He came to Sunday dinner every week, helping with chores and talking with Daniel about cattle and horses and the future. He took Lily on long rides through the territory, showing her beautiful places and always bringing her home before dark. They talked about everything. Their dreams and fears, their memories of those they had lost, their hopes for what life could be. Nathaniel told her about his dream of owning his own ranch someday, building something lasting. Lily told him about her mother's stories, the heritage of medicine women and midwives that ran through her family, skills she wanted to learn and pass down. "We could build that life together," Nathaniel said one evening in September as they sat on the Malone porch watching the sunset. "Your healing work and my ranch, a partnership." "Is that a proposal?" Lily asked, her heart racing. Nathaniel turned to her, his eyes serious and full of love. "Not yet. When I propose, I want to do it right, but I am asking if that is a future you could see yourself wanting, with me." "Yes," Lily said without hesitation. "Yes, I can see that future very clearly." In October, when the desert began to cool and wildflowers bloomed again after the monsoon rains, Nathaniel led Lily back to the valley where he had first watched her gather flowers. He had worked with Daniel to create a surprise, and when they crested the ridge, Lily gasped. Someone had built a small fence around a section of the valley, protecting it from grazing cattle. Within that fence, wildflowers grew in deliberate abundance, every variety Lily had ever gathered. Indian paintbrush, lupine, marigolds, verbena, columbines transplanted from the secret canyon. It was a garden and also wild, cultivated but free, a perfect blend of intention and nature. "Your father and I have been working on this for weeks," Nathaniel said. "He told me about your mother's garden, how she loved growing things. I wanted to create something that honored that, but also honored you. Wild things that grow strong, beautiful things that cannot be contained." Lily walked into the flower garden, tears streaming down her face. She turned to find Nathaniel on one knee, a simple gold band in his hand. "Lily Malone," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You taught me that beauty can heal the deepest wounds, that hope can bloom even in the hardest ground. You brought your father back to life with wildflowers and love, and you brought me back to life too. I did not know I was only half alive until I met you. Will you marry me? Will you build this wild, beautiful life with me?" "Yes," Lily sobbed, dropping to her knees in front of him. Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes. He slipped the ring onto her finger, and they kissed surrounded by wildflowers while the sun set over the Arizona desert. When they finally made their way back to the Malone ranch, Daniel was waiting on the porch with tears on his weathered face and joy in his smile. She said yes, Nathaniel called out. I knew she would, Daniel said. Come here, both of you. They climbed the porch steps together and Daniel embraced them both. Sarah would be so happy, he whispered. She is watching and she is so happy. The wedding took place in November when the weather was mild and the desert showed its gentlest face. They held the ceremony on the Malone ranch, outside under a vast blue sky, with friends and neighbors gathered to witness. Lily wore her mother's wedding dress, carefully altered to fit, and carried a bouquet of wildflowers that Nathaniel had gathered at dawn. Daniel walked his daughter down the makeshift aisle with his head high and his eyes clear. When the preacher asked who gave this woman to be married, Daniel's voice rang out strong. Her mother and I do, with love and blessing. Nathaniel's hands shook as he took Lily's, but his voice was steady when he spoke his vows. I promise to love you in grief and in joy, in hardship and in plenty. I promise to honor the woman you are and support the woman you are becoming. I promise to build a life with you that is wild and beautiful and free, full of flowers and hope and endless love. Lily's vows were equally heartfelt. I promise to stand beside you in all things, to be your partner and your friend. I promise to choose hope even in dark times, to find beauty even in barren ground. I promise to love you with everything I am, for all the days I am given. When they kissed as husband and wife, the gathered crowd erupted in cheers and applause. Daniel wiped tears from his eyes and thought about Sarah, about how she would have loved this day, and felt her presence like a warm hand on his shoulder. The celebration lasted into the evening, with food and music and dancing under strings of lanterns. Daniel played his harmonica while Lily and Nathaniel danced their first dance as a married couple, moving together as if they had been partners for a lifetime instead of mere months. Are you happy? Nathaniel murmured against Lily's hair. Happier than I thought possible, she answered. When my mother died, I thought happiness had died with her, but here we are, he agreed, building something new from broken pieces. They spent their wedding night in the small house Nathaniel had been renting near the Holbrook Ranch, but their future plans were already in motion. Daniel had offered them a portion of the Malone land to build their own home, a generous wedding gift that would allow them to stay close while establishing their independence. Over the winter months, Nathaniel and Daniel worked together to build a house for the newlyweds. It was small but sturdy, with a wide porch that faced east to catch the sunrise and windows that framed views of the desert. Lily helped when she could, learning basic carpentry and imagining how she would make the space their own. In the spring of 1884, they moved into their new home. Lily planted a garden immediately, mixing vegetables with the wildflowers she loved. She learned medicine work from an elderly woman in Prescott who had been a friend of her mother's, studying the healing properties of desert plants and developing skills as a midwife. Nathaniel continued working for the Holbrook Ranch while saving every penny toward his dream of buying land and cattle of his own. He worked long hours but always came home to Lily, and she always had flowers on their table and love in her eyes. Daniel visited often, increasingly comfortable in his solitude now that he knew Lily was happy and cared for. He had started attending church socials again, reconnecting with the community he had withdrawn from during his grief. There was a widow named Margaret who made him laugh, and though nothing had developed between them yet, Lily saw the way he brightened when Margaret was around and felt hopeful. 2 years into their marriage, Lily discovered she was pregnant. The news filled their small house with joy and a fair amount of anxiety. Nathaniel became almost comically overprotective, insisting Lily rest more and work less, until she finally had to remind him that women had been having babies since the beginning of time, and she was healthy and strong. "I know," he said, placing his hands gently on her growing belly. "But this is our baby, our future. I want everything to be perfect." "It will not be perfect," Lily said, covering his hands with hers. "But it will be ours, and that is better than perfect." Their son was born in January of 1887, during a cold snap that had everyone huddling near fires. Lily labored through the night with the elderly midwife attending her and Nathaniel pacing holes in the floor outside. When the baby finally arrived, squalling and healthy, Nathaniel burst into the room with wild eyes. "A boy," Lily said tiredly, holding their son against her chest. "We have a son." Nathaniel approached slowly, as if in a dream. He looked down at the tiny red face and burst into tears. "He is perfect." They named him Thomas Daniel Cross, honoring Nathaniel's lost brother and Lily's father. Daniel held his grandson with shaking hands and whispered stories to him about the grandmother he would never meet, about how she would have loved him beyond measure. As Thomas grew from baby to toddler, the Cross family flourished. Nathaniel finally saved enough to purchase a small herd of cattle and lease grazing land. It was the beginning of their own ranch, the foundation of the dream they had talked about on the Malone porch all those years ago. Lily's reputation as a healer grew, and women from miles around sought her help with births and illnesses. Their second child, a daughter they named Sarah, was born in 1889. She had her grandmother's eyes and her mother's gentle spirit, and from the moment she could walk, she followed Lily everywhere, wanting to learn about flowers and medicine. Daniel married Margaret in a quiet ceremony in 1890, surprising everyone, including himself. He was 52 years old and had not expected to find love again, but Margaret was patient and kind, and she understood that loving him meant honoring Sarah's memory rather than trying to erase it. "Your mother would approve," Daniel told Lily at his wedding. She always said life was for living, and that love was too precious to refuse when it was offered. By 1892, the Cross Ranch was a thriving operation. Nathaniel had purchased land adjoining the Malone property, creating a connected spread that both families worked together. Thomas was 5 years old and already learning to ride. Sarah was 3 and could name every wildflower on the property. One morning in May, Lily woke early and decided to walk out to the valley where she had first gathered flowers nearly a decade before. Nathaniel was still asleep, and the children were with Daniel and Margaret for the night, so she had the rare luxury of solitude. The desert was cool and fresh, the air smelling of rain from the previous night. Lily walked the familiar path, remembering the girl she had been at 18, desperate to save her father from drowning in grief. She had not known then that gathering those flowers would change everything, would lead her to Nathaniel and to the life they had built together. The valley was different now. The protective fence Nathaniel and Daniel had built was still standing, and the wildflowers inside grew thick and lush. But flowers had also escaped the fence, spreading across the valley in waves of color. Indian paintbrush and lupine, marigolds and verbena, all growing wild and free. Lily stood among them and thought about her mother, about beauty and healing, about grief and hope. She thought about how she had picked flowers to remind her father that life was worth living, never suspecting that a cowboy would be watching from a ridge, never imagining that simple act would lead to love. She heard hoofbeats and turned to find Nathaniel riding toward her on his bay horse, the same one he had been riding the first time she saw him. He had gray threading through his dark hair now and lines around his eyes from years of squinting into the sun, but to her he was as handsome as he had been that first morning. "I woke up and you were gone," he said, dismounting. "I figured I would find you here." "I wanted to remember," Lily said, "to think about how everything changed." Nathaniel wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "Do you ever regret it, the path that led us here?" "Never," Lily said fiercely, "not for a single moment." They stood together in the flower-filled valley, watching the sun rise over the desert. Back at their ranch, their children slept safely. On the Malone property, Daniel and Margaret were beginning their day together. The cattle were healthy, the land was good, and the wildflowers grew in impossible abundance. "Your father is retiring next year," Nathaniel said. "He wants to deed the whole Malone ranch over to us." Lily turned in his arms. "What did you tell him?" "I told him we would be honored and that we would make sure it stayed in the family for generations." Nathaniel brushed a strand of hair from her face. "Your mother's legacy continuing on. She would like that," Lily said. "She would like all of this. The life we have built, the children, the flowers. She would like that I love her daughter with everything I am. She would like that most of all." They kissed in the morning light, surrounded by wildflowers, and then walked hand in hand back toward home. The years ahead would bring challenges and joys in equal measure. More children, including twin boys born in 1894 who kept them perpetually exhausted and laughing. Droughts that tested their resilience, good years that filled their barns and their bank accounts. Thomas would grow up to expand the ranch further, while Sarah would become a renowned healer in her own right, teaching other women the medicine knowledge her mother and grandmother had passed down. But that morning in the Flower Valley, all of that was still ahead. In that moment, there was only love and hope and the wild beauty of the desert in bloom. Lily squeezed Nathaniel's hand and thought about the girl she had been, picking flowers to heal a broken heart, and the woman she had become, surrounded by love and family and endless possibility. The porch of their house came into view, sturdy and welcoming, and Lily remembered her father sitting in his rocking chair, empty and grieving, until flowers had reminded him that beauty could survive even the darkest times. She had picked those flowers hoping to save him, never knowing she was also saving herself, creating a path toward a future more wonderful than she could have imagined. Nathaniel lifted her hand and kissed her knuckles. "What are you thinking about?" "Hope," Lily said simply. "How it returns in the strangest ways, when we least expect it but most need it." They climbed the porch steps together, entering the home they had built with love and determination. And out in the valley, the wildflowers continued to grow, spreading their seeds on the wind, creating beauty from barren ground, proving again and again that life persists, that hope endures, and that love can heal even the deepest wounds if we are brave enough to let it bloom. Years later, when Lily was an old woman surrounded by children and grandchildren, she would tell them about the flowers she picked for her grieving father, about the cowboy who watched from the ridge, about hope returning like wildflowers after rain. And her descendants would carry that story forward, a reminder that the smallest acts of love can change everything, that beauty matters, and that wild things have a strength all their own. But on that spring morning in 1892, with her whole life stretching ahead of her, Lily simply stood on her porch with her husband's arm around her shoulders and watched the sun climb higher over the Arizona desert, grateful beyond words for flowers and cowboys and the stubborn persistence of hope. Daniel visited later that day, bringing Margaret and the children home. He stood on the porch of the house he had helped build for his daughter and son-in-law and smiled at the flowers Lily had planted everywhere. Indian paintbrush and lupine, marigolds and columbines, a riot of color against the pale desert earth. "Your mother would be proud," he told Lily, gathering her into a hug. "Of the woman you have become, the family you have built. She is here in these flowers, in your strength, in your love." "She is here in you too, Papa," Lily said. "In the way you came back to life, in the way you chose to keep living." Daniel nodded, his eyes bright with unshed tears. He looked at Nathaniel, who was swinging Thomas into the air while Sarah clung to his leg, and felt a profound sense of peace. His wife was gone, but her legacy continued in their daughter, in their grandchildren, in the love that filled this place. That evening, both families gathered for dinner on the cross porch. Daniel played his harmonica while Margaret sang in a clear, sweet voice. The children chased fireflies in the gathering darkness. Nathaniel and Lily sat close together, her head on his shoulder, his arm around her waist, watching their family with hearts full to bursting. "You remember the first thing you said to me?" Lily asked quietly. I apologized for startling you, Nathaniel said, and told you I had been watching to make sure you were safe. I thought you were strange. I thought you were the most beautiful thing I had ever seen, walking through those flowers with such purpose. Lily lifted her face to kiss him softly. Thank you for watching over me, for seeing me when I needed to be seen. Thank you for picking those flowers, Nathaniel replied, for choosing hope when it would have been easier to surrender to grief. You saved your father, but you also saved me, gave me a reason to believe in the future again. The music continued around them, laughter and love filling the air. Stars emerged overhead, brilliant and uncountable, the same stars that had witnessed Sarah's death and Daniel's grief and Lily's desperate attempts to bring her father back to life. The same stars that had seen Nathaniel watching from a ridge, a lonely cowboy unexpectedly finding his future in a girl with a basket of flowers. Thomas came running up to the porch, his face flushed with excitement. Mama, Papa, look what I found. He held out his hand to reveal a seed pod from an Indian paintbrush, dried and ready to plant. That is a good find, Lily said, taking it carefully. In the spring, we can plant it in the garden. It will grow into a beautiful flower. Like the ones Grandpa Daniel says you used to pick, Thomas said, the ones that made him happy again. Exactly like those, Lily confirmed, her throat tight with emotion. Sarah climbed into Nathaniel's lap, her small face serious. Tell us the story, Papa, about how you saw Mama in the flowers. So Nathaniel told the story again, the way he would tell it hundreds of times over the years. About a girl gathering wildflowers to heal her father's broken heart. About a cowboy on a ridge who watched and fell in love. About hope returning like rain to thirsty ground, unexpected and essential and transformative. The children listened with wide eyes, even though they had heard it before. Daniel and Margaret held hands and smiled. Lily rested against her husband and felt the weight of blessings she had never expected to receive. When the story ended, and the children were finally herded off to bed, Nathaniel and Lily stood alone on their porch, looking out at the dark shapes of the mountains against the starlit sky. We should pick flowers tomorrow, Lily said. Take them to my mother's grave. We will go together, Nathaniel said. The whole family, make it a tradition. And so they did. Every week, the Cross family would walk out into the valleys and canyons, gathering wildflowers together. They would bring them to Sarah's grave and arrange them with love and memory. The children would learn the names of the plants, the same way Lily had learned them from her mother. The knowledge would pass down through generations, an inheritance of beauty and hope. In 1895, Daniel died peacefully in his sleep at the age of 57. He was buried beside Sarah, reunited with his first love, while Margaret and his family mourned him with tears and stories and music. At his funeral, the entire valley seemed to be covered in wildflowers, as if the desert itself was paying tribute to a man who had learned to live again after unimaginable loss. Lily and Nathaniel took over the combined ranches, managing thousands of acres and building a legacy that would last for generations. Their children grew strong and capable, learning the land and the cattle, learning the medicine plants and the old stories. Through droughts and good years, through joys and sorrows, the wildflowers kept blooming. They grew in the valleys and the gardens, along fence lines and beside water sources, a constant reminder that beauty persists, that hope returns, that life continues even after devastating loss. And on quiet mornings, when the work was done and the children were occupied elsewhere, Lily and Nathaniel would walk out to the flower valley together. They would stand among the Indian paintbrush and lupine, remembering who they had been when they first met, grateful for every moment that had led them here. I love you, Nathaniel would say, the same way he said it every day. I love you, Lily would reply, meaning it with her whole heart. And the wildflowers would bloom around them, wild and beautiful and free, proof that hope can grow in the hardest ground if we are brave enough to plant it, nurture it, and believe in its power to transform our lives. The years rolled on, marking time with seasons and celebrations. Lily became a grandmother, then a great-grandmother, always with flowers on her table and love in her home. Nathaniel worked the land until he was too old to ride, then sat on the porch and told stories to children who looked like him and like Lily, like Daniel and like Sarah, a blend of all the love that had come before. When Lily was 75 years old, she walked out into the flower valley one final time. Her body was tired, her joints ached, but her heart was full of peace. She knelt among the blooms she had spent a lifetime cultivating and protecting, and whispered thanks to her mother for teaching her about beauty and resilience. Nathaniel found her there, having followed when he noticed she had slipped away. He was 78, his hands gnarled with arthritis, his hearing fading, but his love for her as strong as the day he first saw her gathering flowers. "Ready to go home?" he asked gently. "In a moment," Lily said. "I am just remembering, saying thank you. For what? For everything. For you. For our life. For these flowers that changed everything." Nathaniel helped her to her feet, and they walked home slowly, supporting each other the way they had for more than 40 years. Their great-grandchildren were visiting, and the house was full of noise and laughter. Multiple generations gathered under one roof. That night, surrounded by family, Lily told the story one more time. About grief and hope, about a girl picking flowers and a cowboy watching from a ridge. About love that bloomed unexpectedly in the hardest ground and grew into something that would outlast them all. "The secret," she told her great-grandchildren, "is to never stop looking for beauty, even in the darkest times, to plant hope even when it seems impossible. To believe that tomorrow can be better than today, and to do the work to make it so." They listened with rapt attention, these children who had never known a world without the love she and Nathaniel had built. They would carry the story forward, tell their own children and grandchildren, keeping alive the memory of a grief-stricken father and a determined daughter and a cowboy who understood that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is choose to keep living. Lily and Nathaniel lived into their 80s, eventually passing within months of each other, the way long-married couples often do. They were buried beside Daniel and Sarah Malone, their graves marked with simple headstones and always wildflowers fresh-picked from the valley. The ranch stayed in the family, passing down through Thomas and then his children, a legacy of hard work and love. The Flower Valley was protected by every generation, a sacred place where the family gathered for celebrations and solace. And the story was told again and again, around dinner tables and on front porches, a reminder of where they came from and what they believed in. A century later, Cross descendants still worked the Arizona land. The ranch had evolved with the times, but the core remained the same. And in the valley where Lily Malone had once picked flowers to heal her father's broken heart, wildflowers still bloomed in impossible abundance, their seeds carried on the wind, creating beauty from barren ground, proving that hope endures and love persists, and sometimes the smallest act of kindness can change everything. The cowboy's daughter had picked wildflowers for her grieving father. He had watched from the porch and felt hope return. That simple moment had blossomed into a love story that spanned generations, a family built on resilience and faith and the stubborn belief that beauty matters. And in the end, that is what endured. Not the hardships or the losses, not the droughts or the struggles, but the love they had chosen and nurtured and protected. The flowers they had planted, both literal and metaphorical, that continued to bloom long after they were gone. Proof that what we create with love outlasts us all, spreading seeds of hope wherever they may land.